Hello everybody, my name is Dr. Q, and these are my top 5 movies of 2015. At number 5 we have Avengers Age of Ultron. Now I'm actually kind of surprised that this one didn't end up higher on my list because it's one of the 2 movies that I was really looking forward to from 2015. And if you know me, then you'll already know what the other one is, but we'll get to that. But yeah, it's not only is it surprising because I was looking forward to it so much, but also in some respects it's just as good if not better than the original Avengers, which I might call my favorite movie of 2012, debatably. But I think the main explanation I can think of for it is that it's just not quite as much of a surprise anymore. Marvel movies are... It's not that Marvel movies aren't what they used to be, but they're not quite the novelty that they used to be. They're starting to get a bit almost oversaturating in the market. But enough negatives, it's still a great movie. It's still a really good movie. It's a lot of fun. It's got a lot of good character moments. It's got a really good villain with James Spader as Ultron. And yeah, I gotta watch it again because I've only seen it once. Which might give it a bit of a disadvantage on this list, but it's still really good. So, number 5. At number 4, I have Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2. I'm a very big fan of all the Hunger Games books and all the Hunger Games movies, so I was looking forward to this one a lot. And it is pretty much as good as all the previous entries. So, because I really like the way that Francis Lawrence directs these, because he's directed every movie since Catching Fire. I like the way that he's able to make it faithful to the book, but still work really well as a cinematic experience. I think it translates everything from the story really well. A lot of people complain about the movies, Mockingjay being split into 2 parts. People say it's too slowly paced because you're stretching out the story too much. I never really got that. I thought that the pacing was fine. I never lost my interest in it. I felt like I was invested in the movie the entire time. And yeah, then they kept all the shocking story moments that were in there. Because I think it's kind of funny how some people actually got really mad about some of the stuff that happened, mostly when it was just the books that were out. And I think the movies capture it pretty well. And I think it's almost a good thing that if it makes you mad that it happened, then it just means that it got you really invested, so then bad stuff happens and you don't like it. That works in the movie's favor, in my opinion. So yeah, it's a really good one. So I'd check it out. At number 3, I have Mad Max Fury Road. This is a movie that not only was I not expecting it to be on my list for best movies of the year, but I wasn't expecting it to get that great of reviews that it's on so many other critics' top 10 lists of the year. Because critics just went nuts over it when it first came out, calling it like one of the best action movies of the decade, one of the best action movies of all time even. And while I do think that's maybe overhyping it a bit too much, that it's putting it on a pedestal that, people's expectations are going to exceed what they actually think of the movie because their expectations will be so high, it's still really good. There's such an energy to the way it was shot, and there's great practical effects. I like the use of fast motion instead of slow motion, the way it's like a very strange effect that creates. And I like the storytelling and the world, the very minimalist story, but the very complex and strange world that they created, that they don't show everything about it, but they show just enough that you get a feeling that there's something grander at work. So yeah, Mad Max Fury Road, great movie. I really liked it. At number 2, I have Pixar's Inside Out. For a long time, this was my favorite movie of the year, like for a good while, because it came out in June, I think it was. And I actually feel kind of bad about it not being my number 1, because it's really good. It's a return to form for Pixar, because they have been releasing some movies that a lot of people haven't liked their movies recently, and I haven't been a huge fan. But this is not only one of the best movies of the year, it's one of their best movies. I put it in my top 5 favorite Pixar movies because it's a movie about emotion, and it's very strong emotion. It's very cleverly written. It's it's meant just as much for adults as it is for kids, because, you know, sitting in the theater with my mom and my younger brother, my mom and I were laughing at some of the jokes more than the little kids were in the theater, because little kids wouldn't get it yet. So it's brilliant, it's emotional, it's cerebral, obviously, because it takes place inside the mind, and the only reason it's not at my number one is as if nobody could see it coming. Yes, my number one is indeed Star Wars The Force Awakens, Episode 7. For those of you who don't know, Star Wars is my second favorite film franchise of all time, just barely being beat out by Lord of the Rings, Middle-earth. And so, I've been looking forward to Force Awakens pretty much since it was announced a couple of years ago. I've been looking forward to this more than any movie since probably the first Hobbit, and maybe even more than that. And so then the movie finally came out, and the first time I watched it I was actually a bit overwhelmed, so I didn't even quite know what I felt about it. I was like, I have to let it sink in for a few days. And so I did let it sink in for a few days. I watched it a second time in theaters, which is something I've never done before for any other movie. And yeah, it's just awesome. I do have complaints, like the plot does borrow too heavily from Episode 4. It seems like they're almost doing a pseudo-remake, in a way. But it's still just awesome. It's hard for me to even say stuff. Just, you know, the characters are great, the action is great, the direction's great, the production design and score both hail back to, you know, classic Star Wars. It's the best film-going experience of the year. So thank you very much for watching my list, all 5 of you who are probably friends of mine on Facebook. And if you have any questions, please comment. And if you would be so kind, you can subscribe to me. So, peace out.